Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondering Where the Lions Are. We're getting it back started again. I have a new guest here, Thaddeus John. Uh, oh, my neighbor's dog is outside. I don't know how he ended up there. Anyway, we'll keep going. We can edit that out. Um, so is that your real name, by the way?
Yeah, Thaddeus
Okay.
John.
Okay, Thaddeus is your first name.
Yes.
Okay. The only reason I ask is some people switch it, and I thought that was a very unique, interesting name. Um,
Yeah, I switched it. John's my middle name.
right, right. Very good. Well, anyway, Thaddeus, we're in the same conscious wealth mastermind group, and I noticed that you were kind of posting content along the lines of helping men deal with pornography addiction. Um, and very much we're kind of aligned in our missions, I would say, and helping men get in touch with themselves, their shadow side, and helping them heal ultimately through our own healing journeys and us supporting each other as men, which I think is severely lacking and needed. So you have a unique niche in terms of the pornography addiction side. And I definitely wanted to pick your brain on that and explore that and kind of figure out who you are and what was your journey like and what brought you to this spot where you're kind of in the still infancy phase, if I'm correct, launching your business of kind of counseling and coaching other men. So, yeah, who are you and how did you get here?
Happy to have this conversation. So, like I said, first name Thaddeus, middle name John here. And I am a man whose biggest interior struggle in his life has been lust and pornography. It only becomes apparent in the retrospective, looking back on it now. But as I've done more and more healing and self-reflection, I noticed that since I first discovered pornography around my teenage years, all the way up until now, and I'm only 27, a pretty much a majority of my life has been deeply colored by lust, pornography, wanting sex, wanting attention from women, masturbation, and it has been my greatest pain and my greatest struggle. And to overcome that, I'm now turning that into my medicine to help other men who are deep in this. And the more I learn and the more I talk to men, I can see how pervasive it is and how hungry men are for this. I'm on Reddit and message boards and forums, and there are so many cases of men who are getting their wives leaving them, their families torn apart, and falling into depression. And I was on that path myself, but I turned it around. And so I'm here to serve that and help other men do the same.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's like you said, so pervasive, so accessible, so ubiquitous. And that I think is why, part of the reason why, I think there's many, it's multifactorial, but part of the reason why a lot of men, and myself included, got hooked and get sucked into the pornography kind of addiction. And I think all addictions kind of play into the natural dopamine reward systems and kind of hijack it. And I think this is a special, unique one for men, um, with the way that you could say sex drive arises in men. It's probably different for women. Um, so, well, kudos to you for honestly overcoming that and now making that your life's mission to help others. It's not easy to shake. I definitely struggled for a long time with it and felt very shameful about it. And that kind of shame loop just kept me right back into it and chained me into it the whole time. Um, and I too also struggled in the majority of my life with porn. I would say a brief period of my life, yes, but the overall theme that I struggled with in my life was becoming my own man, becoming confident, women, dealing with my insecurities around women. And I think all that tied into this lustful hole that I tried to fill with porn. Um, and I feel like for me, that's been my journey. Um, but what do you, I guess the next question, this is a good segue, be like, what do you think it is? What do you think the number one thing in men is pulling them into this porn addiction, besides this, just the easy access and pervasiveness of it? What is that drives us to keep wanting more of this thing that just tears our lives apart and makes us more and more miserable?
What keeps us wanting more of it? Aside from the easy access, the broad pattern and commonality that I see in the men that I'm looking at and also in myself is not only that it's accessible, but that men don't have a clear alternative to spend their time and energy. The most common triggers that I see, and I'll speak from my own experience first, um, boredom and
Mm,
loneliness, and then stress. And so boredom is very, very common, and you talked about how the bigger part for you has been just your journey in becoming a man. And that journey is, I feel like, finding a purpose and something to fight for, something to live for. And if myself, when I was directionless and didn't have anything I was moving towards, it was easiest to fall into how can I make myself feel good now?
mhm.
And it's the same thing with drug addictions as well, where it was hand in hand for me with THC and smoking weed and the pornography use. It was, I'm lost, I'm directionless, and I want to feel good. I want to feel okay. I want to feel comfortable, and I want to escape from my boredom. So that's where it comes up was the boredom most commonly for me. That's what kept me coming back anytime I would fall into a state of boredom, purposelessness. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. It was so easy to grab for that. Not
Yeah.
just because it's available, like it can be available, but if I'm on a mission, I'm not going to grab it. But if I am lost and directionless, I'll turn to that.
That's actually huge. I'm glad you said that because my mind went immediately, and I'm sure many other people's minds went to, well, it's has more to do with lustfulness in and of itself, but boredom is one thing that's huge. And now that you're talking about it, I'm just reflecting on my own kind of path getting hooked onto it. And I remember, I think most of it was boredom. Um, I mean, yeah, sure. How much purpose do you have when I think I was like 12 years old when I first watched porn, 13. But still, with how low my self-esteem was and how little I felt like I could contribute to the world and how little that kind of masculine drive I had in myself, I just wanted to feel good. And I just had all this time on my hands and boredom to want to elevate my state of consciousness, right? When we're in boredom, we're kind of just flat. And this orgasm or this lustfulness is like exciting and a huge hit of dopamine. And then obviously it's short lived and kind of sucks you into wanting more. So boredom is a huge one that I think not many people would realize or consciously come to understand. So I'm glad you said that. Um, would you say that's like the number one thing that you notice in patterns, especially in your own kind of life?
For myself, boredom, I'm not sure exactly what was on the top, but I could say confidently that the top three was boredom, loneliness, and stress. And so boredom and loneliness were like very intertwined for me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm in my room, I don't have any plans, I feel alone, and I don't know what to do with myself. I feel bored. That was like recipe number one for pornography. And then the stress response was also there as a close number three, where whatever's going on back in high school, college, and afterwards, if I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed out, this is a button that I programmed in myself that like press this button and you'll feel good. And that was the second or the third most common reason that led me to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of what I've realized in my journey, is how important it is for men to have drive and direction and purpose. Um, I think I mean, I've found that for a while, and I think we all find this in our pursuits of we're going to college, we're going to get a good job, and we want to be successful materially. That can help you channel this, you could say, sexual drive and this desire to feel good in a healthy way by having healthy dopamine rewards. But at a certain point, I think we all lose purpose. I think just the general, I don't want to say struggle, but over time we can kind of get comfortable and lose sense of purpose, um, and lose passion, I would say is a good word. Like passion for life comes from purpose and service to the world and enjoying the beauty of the life, and a good glass of wine, for example, just like being in the passionate, um, you could say in the lover energy. I'm
Mhm.
not sure if you're familiar with the masculine archetypes, but we can talk on that maybe later. Um, and then in the shadow side of that is like searching too much for pleasure, for the joy of life, and it stops becoming something fulfilling and joyful, whereas it's kind of like a slow high that's there all the time, and you just want that huge hit, that dopamine surge, won't kind of fall off on my purpose. Um, and I think that's why it's unique for men because there is that, drive within all of us to be a provider, to be a sort of, strong masculine figure for our spouse, our friends, our family. And when we lose that, we quickly, unconsciously are searching for that in unhealthier ways. And with it being so accessible, porn, I think, yeah, it's just an easy way out. Um, so boredom, I think, is huge, and that's really, I think that's a good like insight you have, and that helps probably men realize is that, hey, you're just bored a lot. And the
Mhm.
root cause of this is you need to find direction and purpose, which I think is huge and at the heart of it. Um, and then, so boredom, the third one was stress, and the other one was loneliness, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
For you, because I struggle with this too. I didn't have many relationships with women in my life. And a lot of times I was lonely. But it wasn't until later where I kind of leaned into my solitude and enjoyed it. What do you think is, besides obviously not having partnerships or relationships, what do you think is that like the catalyst for loneliness? What do you feel like is it for you that, how did you kind of bring yourself out of loneliness or heal the loneliness within you?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Before I answer that, I'll just say that I have read that King Warrior Magician
Oh,
Lover
yeah,
book.
great.
Definitely studied that. And that specific archetype of the lover and how they talk about the shadow poles of that was spot on for me with all this. One of the shadow poles was the addicted lover. And there's a
Yes.
quote I still remember where it was saying that the addicted lover archetypally is obsessed with viewing and experiencing the goddess in her infinite forms. And that is like pornography to a T. It's constantly like there is the archetypal woman, goddess, beautiful aspect to view. And pornography is this hunger that I want to see every single possible form that a woman can take. This
Yeah.
race, this size, this scene, this scenario. And that is textbook shadow lover there, being obsessed with the goddess and her infinite forms. You asked me about loneliness and how I worked through that and transmuted that. So the key for me here, and this is the loneliness was also linked to what you touched on a little bit, which was you talked about how you experienced a shame loop around your pornography use.
Yes.
And so that was the most painful part of my experience where I had clarity. I'm a very reflective man, so I'm journaling and I'm reflecting and I'm clear. This is, maybe towards the end of college. I'm very clear within myself that I don't want to be watching pornography and it's something I'm not resonant with, yet I would continue to do it. And so that kicks off the shame loop where part of me knows I don't want to do it, part of me does it anyway, and then I beat myself up brutally and just use that as fuel to hate myself more.
Yeah.
And that is the quintessential loop. I mean, there's certainly links to that, like what I've learned that pattern from my father and what he does. And it was alive and well with me through my pornography addiction. And what I found, that was like the crux of it and the most painful part. And that was lockstep with the loneliness because that shame is that what the shame would say is you're worthless, you're pathetic,
Hmm.
no one wants you, no one wants to hang out with you, like you don't deserve any connections, you should just go. It pretty much wanted me to wallow and go hide in a cave, which was my bedroom. And so the shame spiral kept me alone in my
Yeah.
bedroom and feeling like I'm so terrible and I'm so unworthy separated me more and more, which brings me to what actually was able to snap me out of that. I found a flyer for a men's group in the area, and the simple power of sitting in a circle of men and just talking about the fact that I use pornography and I feel bad about it, and sharing that, looking in the faces of other men around me, all of a sudden it wasn't trapped here
Yeah.
anymore. It was, I would maybe previous before that would call my friend and we would talk about it like, hey, I don't want to quit porn. I'm gonna go a week without it. And that was like on and off. But what really released it for me was sitting in a circle of guys who I barely knew by the time I was starting to talk about this and sharing it vulnerably and deeply. Like, I really hate myself. I really don't want to be doing this, yet I keep doing it and it really hurts. And I just want to go hide in my room like a little sad baby. And
Yeah.
to be open with that and then have men stare at me, listen to me, and not walk away, but hold that supportive energy that disarmed the power of that shame loop. And then showing up repeatedly to that men's group every week also chipped away at that loneliness where I wasn't in it alone anymore. I shared a big part of the group is accountability, where I said, I want to make a change here. This is something that is important to me to shift. And they would check in with me every week. Like, how's that going? Did you watch pornography
Hmm.
this week? How are you feeling around that? And all of a sudden, I wasn't doing it alone anymore.
Wow. There's a lot to say about that. Well, first of all, I can very much resonate with that guilt and shame loop. Um, a biggest core pain point for me was my own self-esteem just in general. I went to a very intimidating high school, and I think I just was a very shy kid. Had tons of insecurities, didn't think I was worthy. Um, and I think that also helped lend to that kind of searching for fulfillment in porn. But then, then that furthers the guilt loop because then I'm like, wow, look at you. You can't even control yourself. You're not even a man. You're just doing this because you're so lonely. And what woman could possibly want to be with you?
Mhm.
This pathetic, man that you are. You can't even call yourself a man. Like this thought loop would be in my head. And it's nearly impossible to discipline yourself out of that because the shame loop just brings you right back in. It's like you feel worse about yourself, so you want to feel better some way, somehow. So you go for that dopamine hit to make yourself feel better. And then that same voice that's saying you're a piece of shit because you're watching porn is the same voice that says, just one more video.
Mhm.
This one looks awesome. It's going to feel so amazing. It's the same voice disguised in different kind of voices in your head. And once you're able to, at least in my journey, recognize that, you see it for what it is much easier and you're able to just kind of snuff it out. Um, and what you said, and that's beautiful what you said about having a support group to kind of pull you out because I feel like, and you kind of touched on it, being so vulnerable in front of those men and having them not reject you in the way that you were rejecting yourself lifted that broke that chain of shame already and kind of gave yourself permission, I'm sure, to feel more safe and more confident in yourself that you are not what your body your mind tortures you and torments you into being. And maybe
Yeah, I
one
have
day you
something to
can
say on
overcome
that.
this.
It was the pattern interrupt that I needed because in my experience, I would make a commitment to myself. I would write it in my journal. I'm done watching pornography. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then eventually that voice in my head would slyly convince me to do it again. And the internal cycle I had, like I said, was when I broke my word to myself, it used that as evidence of you're terrible,
Yeah.
you're such a piece of shit. And when I when I came to the men's group, the pattern interrupt there is I show up there and I declare my word not only to myself, writing in my journal, but to a group of men. I say, I'm not going to watch pornography this week. And as it is when overcoming an addiction, that wasn't true right away. It didn't happen the first time I said
Yeah.
it. And so I show up the next week and I say, I did it. I did what I said I was not going to do. I watched pornography and I'm feeling this way about it and I would share about it. But their response is not the same as that evil, mischievous, negative voice that I had inside my mind, where that voice shames me and tells me I'm terrible. Their response was space holding, supportive. Tell me more about that. What's going on? What came up for
Yeah.
you? Uh, Curious. And to receive that from them allowed me to work through the relapses and the struggles instead of getting caught in the same loop by myself.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to touch on that. I guess one is being, and this is kind of what I think was quoted at some point, or some of the insight that I came when studying this king, warrior, magician, lover, and its shadows is we want to be strong. And I think the first step in becoming strong is accepting weakness because we're so afraid to admit it to ourselves, even though there is that voice tormenting us, but we're kind of almost doing battle with that thought, with that voice and be like, well, no, I can, if I just go 1 week without it, I can maybe prove myself. But just stepping into the power of being vulnerable in a group of men and saying, like, I feel weak. Maybe I am weak, and maybe that's okay.
Mhm.
Maybe strength is realizing that I can be weak and not hate myself and just fully embrace every part of myself with love. And that to me is like the first step in becoming strong. So I just wanted to touch on that. I think you probably would agree with that.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, well, I'll touch on whatever other things. I'll just let you kind of comment.
Yeah.
What comes up for you with that?
Alongside with that, that was my process as well, was accepting, I mean, broadly, there's so many shadows to accept, but the weakness for me, that moment of transformation showed up also in the men's group where it came out as like them reflecting back to me that it's okay to ask for help on this.
Yeah.
And that was the antidote for that loneliness as well was I can send a message to this group chat or to these guys specifically and ask for help and ask for support. Like, I'm feeling really lonely right now. I don't want to give into the same pattern. You know, I want to change. Can we just hop on the phone and talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? And yeah, asking for help is akin to recognizing weakness in my mind
And
because it
accepting
was
it.
like, I can't
Yeah.
do this on my own. Please help me. I want help. I need help. And that's a vulnerable place that takes courage to step into.
Oh yeah. I think it takes a humility to recognize that I don't feel like I can do it on my own. And I've been trying almost arrogantly to do it by myself and to
Hmm.
prove myself that I can, but I really can't. And I need help. And that is, if you look, there's like the hero, and then there's the shadow archetype of the hero, where it's like the guy that is always reckless. I think the example they use is like Top Gun Maverick in it, where he's
Hmm.
like always doing these reckless things and like doing what you could consider as heroic, but is endangering himself and his team. And so that's what I see in that kind of shadow archetype is like trying so hard to prove yourself. Because from that deep core place, you don't feel strong. You don't feel like a hero. You do feel weak. And you're trying to do it on your own. And you're just staying in that guilt and shame loop. Um, at least that's what comes up for me. Um,
Yeah, that's
I
spot
just,
on.
okay,
The
sorry.
the that pole of the hero was characterized by a feeling of invincibility, which
Mm,
is the mature warrior recognizes his own limitations. And
yes.
so that's exactly what this was like, I can't do this myself. You said something that's exactly my experience and what I see all the time is men just trying to discipline themselves out of it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna do push-ups and cold showers and just like try really, really hard. And you can't, I could
It's a
not
losing
do
battle.
that. Yeah.
You can like maybe have like a few wins here and there, but then you're just gonna
Yeah.
get piled up by the voice and there's no way.
Hmm.
It's a losing battle.
Yeah.
'Cause I've tried that. I've tried being like, okay, this is the time, we're done, no more. And this is what I want to touch on too. It's like that voice of guilt and shame. If we just see it for what it is and give it love, like, that's just the part of ourselves that's trying to protect ourselves. It's trying to get us to stop feeling bad by paradoxically making us feel bad. And
Hmm.
so so it keeps us in that loop. So we just, for me at least, when seeing that voice for what it is and giving it love, even though it's tormenting you, just dissolves it. And I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why inner child work and parts work has been hand in hand with the men's group a key aspect of overcoming this, where, like you're saying, that voice of shame in my response to my addiction, the first approach was for me to paint this part of me as bad and evil and terrible. It's all bad. The part of me that wants to watch pornography is bad and evil and terrible.
Right. And I need to
And
destroy that part of me.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I'm fighting with it.
Yeah.
But the integration here was to read about things like inner child and inner teenager and parts work that, like you're saying, it's more complex than that, where when I really sit with myself and I patiently give space to that part of myself, it shows up and I can get into a conversation and learn more. And what I've found is these patterns, psychological constructions in my mind are formed in my teenage years or childhood years, and they always have altruistic intentions for me.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, they want me, like I mentioned, the trigger was stress, boredom, loneliness. And so here is a in myself, you can picture a younger teenage version of me that wants me to feel good, doesn't want me to feel stressed and bored and alone. And so, with good intentions, he is suggesting and putting into my conscious awareness the urge to watch pornography because he wants to protect me and make me feel good, like I'm loved, like I have a connection with a woman, like I'm desired, like I'm powerful. He has all these needs that he's trying to meet. And it takes inner work and connecting with that to unwind it and have that conversation of, I want what you want, but the way you have been getting it for us by watching pornography, for example, is actually hurting Thaddeus. And
Yeah.
we both want Thaddeus to feel good. I'm with you there. Like, we want him to feel powerful. We want him to feel loved. And this button that you keep pressing to send lustful urges and watch pornography, that worked in the past. And thank you for that. But it's no longer how we're going to move forward.
Wow. Just that what you just said, like, thank you for that. Like, actually seeing that part of you for what it is and giving it thanks for
Mhm.
what it's done for you. Maybe it's given you some benefit in the past, but now you're having that gentle kind of, you're almost like being the father to your own self.
Yeah.
And for me, I've done a lot of inner work in the past few months with my mentor. And a lot of that involves me being the father figure to my younger self that maybe I wanted in my own father. And not
Yes.
to, disparage my father. My father is amazing. But sometimes our parents are not perfect people and we need some certain things from them that we don't get. Um, but that's all part of the journey, right? Like that's how we become strong ourselves. And so it's all for the greater good.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I can resonate with all of that. I mean, when I look back, I I started porn when I was like, I think 12 or 13. I think I was seventh grade. And throughout high school, I was kind of on and off of it. Um, but really, I'd say my biggest hook was when I graduated high school and I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And that was, as I look back on it, the loneliest, most stressful, most unfulfilling time in my life, I would say. And it makes sense that that was like the point where I was having the hardest time with porn was that. And once those root things solved themselves, then naturally I was able to stop the porn. But it wasn't through de uh, discipline and effort.
Mhm.
Like I tried that and it just wouldn't work. Um, wow. So yeah, boredom is huge. Loneliness is massive. I think we kind of cover that. And then stress. Um, maybe you can speak more on that. Do you feel how does that arise that you think usually in men with stress and dealing with just masturbating and porn?
It is difficult to interrupt something that feels so automatic.
Mm.
Um, when I was stressed and I had the ability to watch pornography, it would happen before I could even, it wasn't conscious at that point.
Yeah.
And so for so many men, they develop a coping mechanism, like I mentioned, early in teenage years, and it has benevolent, altruistic intentions for you. And as it continues later in life, perhaps in college or in adult life, it's automatic and we don't question it. We're not even aware of it.
Mm.
And what I had to do was bring a lot of awareness and attention to that. I literally had to write on a piece of paper that it was like one side, the cover would say, when the urge to watch pornography arises, open this note.
Mm.
And I would put it in the place that I would see it, like in my bedroom or somewhere like that. And in there, I would have a section for each of those triggers. And one of them was stress. And so what worked for me was to come up with beneficial ways to deal with that trigger. So for stress, the most helpful thing for me, I had a list of those, was something as simple as a 10-minute yoga session by
Mm.
myself, just following a yoga video. breathing, getting down on the ground, that was way more effective at dealing with my stress. I also use this for smoking weed because it smoking weed was like a stress thing for me too. And I had to open up this paper and look at like, okay, I can do a 10-minute yoga, I could do a 10-minute meditation, I could just go for a walk. Um, those were my biggest ones that I used to de-stress. And it took it took a lot of being intentional about it, committing it to myself, and using the men's group as accountability and reflections, and showing up and saying, I did it again. I smoked weed instead of doing yoga, and I'm gonna do better next week. I watched pornography when I was really, really stressed because yeah, I remember one of them was I was just watching too many doomsday type of videos and was
Oh yeah.
convinced that, leading up to, um, I don't know if this was the past election or the one before it, but just convinced that like civil war was imminent in the United States and I need to prepare. And all that stress was like, all right, I'm just gonna smoke weed, watch pornography, and try to escape from that stressful, scared feeling.
Yeah.
And it took, like I said, committing to myself and my men's group, being super intentional and having that, it's almost like I see it as reprogramming like a computer where my computer is programmed to do this thing. When stressed, go watch pornography, and I
Right.
had to rewrite it of when stressed, go sit down, take a breath, do some yoga, go for a walk, and do all these things, send a message to someone, like a list of things to do before I go to that step of watch pornography.
Yeah, what comes up for me with that is self-awareness is kind of the healing um remedy for a lot of these things. Because I mean, we just touched on how you can't discipline yourself out of it. But it seems
Mhm.
like you did this in a way where you use the discipline of like, okay, there's the urge here. Let me do this to get to the root cause, like to shine awareness on the root cause of what's going on. And then that in and of itself becomes a pattern or interrupt. So it's like using
Mhm.
leverage almost on discipline rather than just a hard discipline of like, no, because like you said, and I know this exact experience, and I know anyone else can agree. When you're in that automatic loop, it's like you can just it's almost like an out of body experience. Like you're just watching your body get up, go to the bathroom, put this video
Mhm.
on, your favorite video, right? And it's just like, and then once it's all done, you're like, I feel like I blacked out. Like it just took over me. And there was no like conscious thought in between there of like, should I do this? Should I not? What's going on here? Why? It's just no, it's just automatic. And that
Yeah.
goes for any addiction that anyone can speak on.
Yeah, the what I suggested, it does approach it from a conscious level, and it seems like it is a structured approach that is adding some discipline and a reprogramming there, but it's not only willpower and discipline because it requires, like you're saying, those moments of silence, meditation, and reflection where after a relapse, I'll sit and journal and meditate and think about, connect with that part of me. Why did I do that? What was the reason that triggered me to do that? What was the trigger or cue in my environment that led me to do that behavior? And then deeper than that, like I said, what are those needs that pornography is trying to do? And so uh, that's how I came to that clarity around, oh, it's when I'm stressed, it's when I'm
Mm.
lonely, it's when I'm bored. These are the cues and the triggers. And yeah, it took that reflection to get to that level to be able to create a structure that meets those needs. Because otherwise, you're not actually meeting those needs. Like when I would just do 10, 20 push-ups or just do a cold shower, I didn't actually de-stress myself or get a
Probably
feeling
increase your
of,
stress.
yeah, it wouldn't help with my loneliness or my boredom to do those things. And so I wasn't meeting that need. And that's why it wouldn't work, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're not meeting the root cause of the issue.
Hmm.
Um, Wow. So you came to that men's group, you kind of healed, you did a lot of this inner work, worked on the parts, the shadow parts of yourself that weren't really looked at and healed. and you kind of came to this point where you turned out on the other side, and now you are, well, I guess my question is, did you see yourself now being this person that's on social media talking about these things and leading men and helping them? Did that kind of come right away once you overcame this, or was there something else that inspired you to kind of take this on as your own mission?
The message that was clear to me is our greatest struggle is our medicine to offer the world. And like I
Yeah,
said, this has been my biggest challenge. And so reflecting on that, what did I come here in this life to do? I reflected on what has been my biggest pain and my biggest challenge. And it is this. It is my interior experience of lust and self-hatred and shame and pornography addiction. And because I felt that so deeply and I lived that so deeply, that is what empowers me to be able to be the man that helps men with this because I've been in it just like they have been in it. Um,
yeah,
Being on social media is just the vehicle to get it done.
yeah,
It's how to reach men. It's how to let them know that I'm here to help them, is to create content, be on social media and reach them where they're at and bring them in to help them. It's not a necessary thing. I don't want to be a big YouTube channel or want to be any certain amount of followers. It's just the tools for me to do my mission, which is connect with conscious men who want to quit watching pornography and extend a hand to help them.
beautiful. I think overall, pornography addiction is a symptom of an underlying kind of lack of, you could say structure, you could say cultural values, you could say mechanisms to deal with trauma
Mhm.
in our society, particularly for men. I mean, women struggle in their own way with their own issues. But I think a lot of the issues in this world is we're such disconnected from ourselves. I'm talking about men specifically. Like we're so disconnected. We're so disembodied. We're so distracted. Um, and we're so off from purpose, and we're so lacking in initiation into manhood,
Mhm.
and support among ourselves, as men to help each other and to be vulnerable and to be in touch with ourselves. And that has led to a lot of issues with where we are today. And so that's why I think this conversation is so important. One of the symptoms of that is rampant porn addiction. That, I mean, everyone knows I mean, anyone that's a man our age, or just even reaching into, puberty, knows or has dealt with at some point porn addiction. It's just too ubiquitous. It's just too accessible. And the underlying stressors are there all everywhere. Um, so it's a huge deal. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly common. I don't have the statistics with me, but they are shocking and get more and more shocking. Every year they're updated with the percentage of men who are addicted to porn as adults, as well as the statistics on how early men are watching pornography for the first time in childhood. It
Yeah,
is something crazy. I think it's like 90% of men have watched pornography around the age of 11 is where
yeah.
it's at today. And yeah, you mentioned, is it a symptom of where we're at? Is it causing the disembodiment and distraction, or is it a symptom of the disembodiment distraction? That's an interesting question. It
Or is
feels
it both,
like
maybe?
chicken and egg to me,
Yeah,
like hand in hand of they go together. But the disembodiment part, I'd like to speak on a bit because
yeah,
it is when you are watching pornography, it is inherently a mental phenomenon. You
Yeah.
are watching something on your screen, and there is not a, of course, there's not a real woman on your body connecting with, touching you, looking into your eyes. It is a, it is a imaginative game that you
It's
are
a
playing
passive
when you're
game.
watching pornography.
Yeah.
It's what?
It's a passive game,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
like
you're
you're
not
not
actually
in it.
active in it.
And that's
And
like a huge, yeah, that I was just gonna say that's like a huge issue because that kind of just like takes all the drive out of you, right? Like, and you become kind of like nulled or lulled into this passive addiction,
mhm.
which is totally opposite of what sex and passion should be and is. Um,
Yeah, it's inherently passive in the sense of like, and this is a whole genre is like cuckold porn where even in the videos, like one man will watch another man have sex with his wife. But
mm,
that's what every man is, like who's watching pornography, even though that's not your girlfriend, like you are passive in the sense that you're watching two other people have sex and it's not you doing that, even though you are, and this is why I say it's imaginative, where you're imagining that you are that guy, usually. That's how I did it at least. And
yeah.
also what this does is it programmed me to live my life in a mental, lustful fantasy way where and this was some of the most painful parts of my pornography addiction was how wired I was to fantasize and lust over women who I would see out and about. And it's not embodied. It is a fantasy in my mind. And if you think about someone who's masturbating, even put the video to the side, they're most likely masturbating with a fantasy in their head. And so they're not literally embodied, like connected to their body. And this was a huge learning and reprogramming for me as I got off of pornography and then got off of pornography fantasy was, can I just be in my body and be in the sensation of that? Whether that's like alone when I'm masturbating to do that without a fantasy, and then that
Mm,
evolved into actually having sex with my girlfriend, with a woman, is there's not a fantasy on top of it, and it's not the disembodied was like pornography trained me to be so focused on how
visual.
things looked. It was
Yeah,
so
visual
visual, the
oriented.
experience.
Yeah.
I want her to look this way. I want her to make that face. And
Yeah.
it was a whole embodiment learning journey for me to feel my body and feel her body and make love with our eyes closed. And there's no visual, like put a blindfold on myself, put a blindfold on her, because women have this deeply programmed as well, the visual aspect of pornography. They
Mm,
want to perform and look the way that we are programming ourselves to expect them to look. And
yeah.
there's a whole embodiment journey to go on to get out of that mental visual experience of sex and intimacy.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because when I was, yeah, deep into the porn addiction, that was the big thing for me that would arouse me was I needed that visual stimulation. Like I needed the body to be perfect. I needed her to make this face. I needed
Mhm.
to her to look her body look this way. Like, it was all visual and it was less sensual. And like now when if I'm like having sex with my girlfriend, the best sex we have is when we just kind of turn the lights off and we just get into the feeling of it and the sensuality of it and like connecting her body with my body. And yeah, like that has kind of, I mean, I think I've deprogrammed myself from the visual stuff for a while, but now like with having the actual visceral experience, it just makes me realize how disembodied I was. Like you're not connected to the actual act itself. You're actively dissociating yourself by watching porn
Mhm.
from what sex is. And I think that's probably what creates a deeper craving. It's like that was so unsatisfying. That was so unnatural. Like there was something missing from that. And I want more of it. And then that's what we keep looking for, like a more more kinky video. And like,
Mhm.
okay, now like make it like a gangbang. I don't know, like, just like, and all these distortions. I was just talking with my girlfriend again the other night. It's like she knows a lot of people, a lot of couples that need to spice things up in their relationship with like a threesome, for example. And it's like, what is the underlying cause there? And for me, that's a lack of intimacy and connection with your partner, a symptom of that. And so trying to solve that by introducing a foreign person in the bedroom, and she's giving me
Hmm.
a couple stories of how that basically ended their relationship and was the
Mm.
nail in the coffin. Whereas that could have been a good opportunity to maybe rectify that relationship. And maybe it wouldn't have worked out either way, but at least that's what I see is like we are disembodied in ourselves, what we want. And so we're looking for ways to solve that in
Yeah.
unhealthy ways,
Yeah.
unproductive
I've
ways.
I've had a huge epiphany related to that specifically, just this year with my girlfriend, where even some men who I highly respect in the spiritual space and listen to and look up to as like leaders and podcasters, I got this feeling from them of to, like you're saying, like it was almost that my girlfriend, my woman, my wife is there to do all of the most kinky things possible with. And
Right.
like we want to explore all the different ways to be kinky with each other and whatever fantasies I have sexually, she's gonna gratify those and vice versa.
Yeah.
But
What can I
this,
take from this relationship? How can I take from this woman? It's like that frame
mhm.
of mind, you know?
Yeah, how can I take from her? So that's exactly what became clear to me is, and this is actually for me, it was intimately related to the orgasm itself and
Hmm.
um, orgasm in sex. It- The the key of it was like when the goal of sex was my orgasm, it felt takey from her.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I want to have this sexual experience so that I can get my pleasure. And there's something very selfish about that.
Yes.
It's inherently about me and getting myself off, having my release, having my moment. And it was the same thing with these kinky fantasy things like it was about like I have this story in my head that I want you to dress up this way or do it this way or act this way. And it felt after more reflection just selfish and egoic. And
Yes.
it was about me getting my pleasure. And after I named that and I talked about that with my girlfriend, we experimented with having sex with the goal of no orgasms,
Yeah.
chaste sex, semen retention, like on both ends. And like it's not about I'm using you to fulfill my fantasies or vice versa. And that opened up a whole window into a beautiful, deeper, intimate connection and relating between us, and a deeper sense of safety for her, a deeper sense of connection for me. And it wasn't until then that I experienced sex that wasn't lustful. And lust like
Yeah.
arose and came down in waves, and it
Sure.
continues to do that. But it wasn't until I like had sex with the goal of not orgasming, which is related to not fetishizing or finding the next kinky thing, that I was able to experience like love making, a loving connection. It's about intimacy, it's about connection, and we can share sexual energy together in a way that is not my own selfish gratification.
That's so huge. That's like such a paradigm shift from what we're used to from
Mhm.
porn and all that. And yeah, I've had the exact same kind of conversations and interactions with my girlfriend. It's like when you watch porn, like your objective is to orgasm. Like you do that with the sole purpose of you are going to have an orgasm. And I never conceived of like having sex and not needing to orgasm to enjoy it. And we've had moments where we're having sex and I'm just really trying to get her and I'm like almost like reprogramming her. I'm like, listen, I want you to enjoy this too. Like I want you to have pleasure. I want you to orgasm. And and there's that. And then there's also just the sensuality of like none of us even need to have an orgasm. Like we can just both enjoy this.
Hmm.
And I never thought I would enjoy sex um that didn't end in an orgasm. Like and we've had those moments. And yeah, it's just it goes back to that conversation about the sensuality and the pleasure of it is from the physical touch, the connection, rather than what I am taking from this. And like we both really don't need to spice things up or have any kind of kinky fantasies. Like maybe we'll be like, oh yeah, some lingerie or whatever, or like, oh, we would be nice if we're all dressed up, like whenever we go to a wedding, that would be nice. But like you said, it comes and goes. Like the lust will come and go in waves, but there's a deeper connection and intimacy there. Um, that is again, it's kind of this chicken and egg conversation. Like that leads to greater intimacy with between us with the kind of sex we're having, but then also it's a manifestation of the great intimacy we already have and the moments where we're connecting, sharing time together. And so yeah, it's so much more fulfilling when you're from that paradigm. And when you're in this porn addiction, it's the exact opposite. Like it's just about I'm doing this to orgasm to get that next high. Um, yeah, I mean, I've never gone and watched a porn video with like, I'm just gonna like, stroke out a little bit and then I don't need to come. Like, no,
Hmm.
that's not what you're doing it right for.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for admiring the beauty of that woman. I mean, sure, maybe you are, but like it's for you. It's about you. And I think that's why there's a lot of distortions, in relationships when it comes to like fetishes. And maybe some women are into it too, if that's genuine, but maybe some of them just go along with it just to please their man, you know, and to stay in a relationship. Um, yeah, it's like all those things you said. I think I've come to realize that now that that's a thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watching pornography, like you said, it is all about me, and I'm only paying attention to how she looks in the scene.
Yeah.
There's never a connection to the humanity of that
Yeah.
person. Who is this human? And it is like I'm going to use them and the visual data I'm receiving for my pleasure.
Mm.
And it's it opened up a whole window to me to discover sex in a new way. Like, and imagine having sex, and while you're doing it, you are connected heart to heart with your girlfriend, your wife, and in that moment, you are feeling the pure desire that she be so happy and at peace and full of energy. Like you're wishing
Mm.
well for her. That energy is going, shining out from me and exchanging through the sexual connection into her. It's a giving there. It's
Yeah.
not a taking. And that totally flipped it. And then on top of that, you talked about how it increases intimacy. There's books on this too. I'm reading a book called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow that talks about the after effects of orgasm for men and women and the neurochemistry of what happens when we orgasm and the programming we have biologically from early humans, like mating programming versus bonding programming. And when we have sex to that complete orgasm, complete satiation, as she says in the book, it disconnects us for a bit. I'm sure you and all the men know that feeling of like, I just want to like sleep and lie
Yes.
here. And the day after I orgasm, or especially like maybe the moment right after, I definitely don't want sex right now. And there's something similar that goes on with women. It's not, of course, it's not exactly the same. They don't physically ejaculate semen like we do, but they have the whole mental experience of an orgasm, which activates the same circuits. And what we found avoiding orgasm and focusing on the connection is that that desire, that fire for each other is stoked and it's there all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's not like we had this hot, explosive sex until we both orgasmed one night, and then we don't really want to have anything to do with each other until that like comes back alive for us after a few days. It,
Yeah.
if you can stop the sex and end it before the orgasm, there's this like feeling because we expect that of like something's not done, like I still want more and
Yeah.
I still want this connection, and that keeps the relationship much more intimate, and there's this like eros and sexual desire that is alive all the time now.
Yeah. I definitely feel that with my girlfriend. And I think it's from just like we talked about, like the intimacy is there outside the bedroom, and the connection is there, and the genuine love for each other. We want to serve and please each other in other ways too, is there. And I think that's what leads to it, leads to like passion never really dying and going away. And I definitely resonate with you. It's like, especially with porn, that orgasm is severely like depleting. Um, Even though like the addiction doesn't just go away, like I could still do it again the next day. It's not
Hmm.
like that, but it's just when I'm orgasming, when I'm let's try saying that 5 times fast. When I have an
Hmm.
orgasm with my partner, um, it doesn't deplete me in the way that like masturbating or like watching porn would do. I mean, sure, there's that like feeling there, that neuro feeling, like you said. But the passion is still there where I can have sex again, and then like that's where the kind of this conversation of like, well, I can keep going and I don't need to orgasm. I mean, physically it's like harder for me to orgasm now
Hmm.
after that, like but like I just want that passion to still be there. Like I wanted to keep going. I don't want it to stop.
Hmm.
Because the fire is just burning still. But in a good way, and not in like an insatiable like you know addiction way. It's just in a alive, energetic, vibrant way.
Hmm.
That gets stronger and enriches you and rejuvenates you rather than depletes you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a, like you're saying, it's not a hungry ghost,
Mm,
unsatisfied desire. It's like a allurement and attraction to each
yeah,
other. It's kind of like what you mentioned with that mature lover energy where I can be so in love with a forest or a mountain. I am totally enamored with my girlfriend and connected with her, and like I want to connect with her in the most intimate of ways. And uh when I refrain from orgasming, that allurement and that desire to connect remains like day
yeah,
after day. And it's like, oh, I just want to hug you and I want to be with you and I want to connect with you.
yeah. We joke with each other like we can't keep our hands off each other. Like this is bad. We can't get things done. Um, wow. Yeah, this conversation has been beautiful already, and we've already gone down roads that I think we go down. Um, do you have anything else that you'd like to kind of touch on, that you feel is important in your journey, or just that would help men break from this addiction cycle?
Yeah, I'll speak on what I've seen the most talking to men and helping men in this space is they most commonly, when I ask them what they want discipline and self-control and focus. And so there is a link here between pornography and distraction in general. But so I'll say two things about that. The first is that with distraction and discipline, I have found in my experience, you won't have success if you just quit pornography, but you keep TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and you're always scrolling those. You're
Right.
still programming your mind with that unfocused, lack of purpose, distraction, and eventually, while you're scrolling, you're going to find an attractive woman who's doing a dance video,
Yeah,
and that'll send you right on the ship back to giving into your pornography addiction. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. The second thing about, yeah, these men want discipline and self-control. And so I'll just share to if any of you are listening, that it's counterintuitive that that may be what you want. And to get there, you have to lean into vulnerability, like we mentioned
Mhm.
earlier in the call, and connecting with a coach, a therapist, or a men's group, and getting support from men. And
Yeah.
it is in that container that you will be able to find your footing and build that discipline and self-control. Because we already said most of this, but if you just try to brute force it and do it all your own, journal it yourself, I promise I won't watch porn now. I'm really, really serious this time for the 10th time. It's not going to work. You need to share yourself, be witnessed by another man, and ask for help and do the inner work. And that's not what this isn't even on men's radar when they think I'm addicted to porn. I wish I had control and discipline. They start watching, and this was me, start watching David Goggins and Jocko Willink and like the misdisciplined willpower guys. Um,
Yeah.
and actually it's it's support and vulnerability and accountability that'll get you there.
Yeah. I actually have I agree. I feel like it's great to be super disciplined, but from an embodied place. And I feel like a lot of these guys, um, David Goggins types, are like hyper disciplined as a compensation mechanism. And they're actually lacking embodiment. Um, and this is actually, I'm glad you said that because this is a huge point. This is kind of the inspiration for the message I wish to deliver. Um, and what this podcast is about is like men, we want to be like the strongest, ultimate archetype, masculine archetype. And neglect the fact that we are disembodied and we need what you could say is feminine healing, like inner child work, vulnerability, getting in touch with our emotions. Like these are things that if we can't, if we don't have that capacity to heal through that and to integrate it with that, paradoxically, we can't be that ultimate razor focused, disciplined, masculine archetype that we need to be. And when we're
Mhm.
from that embodied place, all that flows naturally. The man that we need to be is there. Like it's within us. It's already there, guys. You just need to be within yourself, healed and integrated. And that's for me was what ultimately I feel like at age 30, I'm finally beginning to just step into the fullness of what it means to be a man. And I'm just
Mhm.
beginning. I know I stay humble enough to realize that. But that is what's led me to kind of be in this new relationship. I feel like I wasn't the man I needed to be even a few months ago. Um, and now ever since that's happened, everything is so effortless. And I'm just am watching that man grow within me.
That's beautiful. And I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I'm serving from a place of imperfection, and I've confronted my shadows and integrated parts of myself. And I have plenty of neuroses and shadows that I
Mm.
still am affected by and hijacked by and taken over by. And I wanted to say something about, you mentioned the feminine healing is the doorway that allows us to step into that masculinity. And
Yes.
this, for me, that looked like what you mentioned earlier is being my own loving parent.
Yes.
The the workbook that I use is literally called the Inner Loving Parent Workbook or Guidebook or something like that. And I would agree with you, it's feminine healing because the feminine quality to me is that nurturing, spaciousness, unconditional loving.
Yes.
And but it's not like I'm showing up as my mother. In my psychological experience, I am my own inner loving parent as myself as an adult version, which is like a
Yes.
father, it's a man, and but that man is capable of connecting with 4, 5, 8-year-old Thaddeus and holding him and listening to him in that feminine, nurturing way. And that's the
Yes.
feminine healing that I've experienced, and it absolutely does wonders and works.
1000% exact. That's my exact experience when I do this feminine healing work is I'm being that father that is nurturing and compassionate and wise, and he's able to offer me that feminine compassion, which empowers me to receive masculine wisdom, um, and being empowered with that rather than feeling like I'm being dismissed. If I just had some masculine wisdom being like, just pull yourself up by the bootstrap, kid. Like you can do it. Like that's very important. But if you don't feel seen and heard, that message is not going to be received.
Mhm.
Um, I could go on and on. I actually feel like for you Star Wars nerds out there, that's kind of like the fall of Anakin. If you're all familiar, I feel like he lacked that compassion that he was looking from like a masculine archetype, and he got that from Emperor Palpatine, and he was manipulated into
Mm.
the dark side through that way. So, but that's a side tangent.
Yeah, there is a space, of course, for, pick up, keep
Yes,
going, even when it's painful. That's part of the warrior to be able to
yes,
continue and push through pain and willingly embrace pain. But when it comes to my inner child, that message doesn't heal him. He
mm-mm,
wants to be approached, and I say to him, what are you feeling? Tell me more about that. What's going on? It's okay. I'm here for you. I know you're scared. I know you're angry. I know you're sad. I'm here for you. You can tell me as much as you want about this. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm right here with you. And that's a different message. That's the healing message that my inner child needed to hear. And that unlocked all sorts of gifts, like the, and actually related to the pornography thing, healing the inner child unlocks a innocence. There was a
right.
time where you saw women innocently before you ever watched your first pornography video. And that child is
Wow.
within you, and he can still see even the most curvaceous, bodacious woman. He can see her and just look at her like she's any other human and smile and giggle at her and splash in a puddle. There is that
Yeah.
innocence and that purity, and that is available within you.
Beautifully said. You see the beauty of that woman in her fullness rather than just her physical appearance. And that's what I see in my girlfriend. It's just she's a complete woman to me, and it's beautiful, in a way I can't describe.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Thank you for this conversation, Thaddeus. This was powerful. Um, you're a huge inspiration. I think you're doing great work, and I am here for you. I am following you, and I'm rooting for you. And let's touch base and have another conversation soon.
Yeah. Thank you for being a brother on the path and having these conversations, doing very adjacent, similar work to me. I feel a kinship in your mission.
Beautiful. And where can people find you on social media for those who are interested?
On YouTube, the channel is Thaddeus John. I'll send you the link and you can put it in the description.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Thaddeus. And until next time, we'll see you later. Take care.